A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome all of you to our talk for tonight. For your information, the talk tonight is organized by a group of first-year law students from the University of Malaya for our Law and Society course project. Hence, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who came tonight on behalf of the organizers. Give yourself a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
So, we will be having two talks tonight. The first one entitled Abortion and Sex Education, a Tale on Taboos, and the second talk is titled Child Grooming, What Are the Impacts and Solutions? We have invited experts to enlighten us all tonight.
Ladies and gentlemen, child abortion has been something that has been frowned upon by the majority of our society, even though we pride ourselves to be open-minded people. It is a topic that provokes much emotion from both sides of the debate. And like all ethical debates, the gray areas are more common than the clear-cut black and white answers. And what better way to explore these gray areas than to discuss our views?
So, our lineup of speakers for the first talk are Mr. Abdul Kadir Shah bin Sahibuddin, a global ambassador and international young leader at Dundee, and also a final-year MBBS student at University of Malaya, and Mr. Wei Pin, the vice chairperson of the Society of Medical Students, and also a human rights trainer at International Federation of Medical Students Association. This talk will be moderated by Mr. Isaiah Majupun, a final-year law student. Without further ado, we will pass the floor to our moderator. Please welcome.
Alright, good evening ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming to our talk tonight. So tonight we will have a very casual discussion on the issue of abortion as well as sex education in our country. Now the structure that we are going to have tonight, I'm just going to lay it out all for you. Firstly, we're going to do about an introduction, a legal introduction into abortion and sex education. And then we're going to have a general questioning on these two issues for our two speakers, and then we're going to head on to a specific question. Now, the last 15 minutes of our talk, you guys are most welcome to pose any questions you have, if you have any inquiry or you need any clarifications on what was delivered tonight. Now, when it comes to abortion and sex education in Malaysia, as what the MC has said just now, it is actually a huge taboo in our society, and the awareness of people's legal rights in terms of their access to abortion is very much diminished in our society today. Now, I'm just going to give a little legal introduction into abortion rights in Malaysia. There's a huge misconception that abortion is legal in Malaysia, but that is actually wrong. Abortion is unconditional abortion is legal. If you want to have access to an abortion, it comes with several conditions. The law actually criminalizes unconditional abortion because in order for you to have an abortion, it falls under 312 of our penal code. And there are three criteria in order for you to have an abortion. Number one, the person performing that abortion has to be a registered doctor and whose opinion in good faith believes that the continuation of such pregnancy poses a risk to the health of the pregnant woman, number two. And number three, the continuation of such pregnancy poses an injury to the mental and physical health of the pregnant woman. So these are the three elements that has to be satisfied in order for you to have a legal abortion in Malaysia. And surprisingly enough as well, our penal code was borrowed from the Indian penal code, as law students here would know. And surprisingly as well, prior to actually 1971, abortion in all forms was actually illegal. There were only two amendments made to Section 312, firstly in 1971 and in 1989 to add those elements. So prior to this, our grandmothers, our mothers had no access at all to abortion prior to 1971. The reason why Parliament amended that specific provision in 1971 and 1989 is because there was an influx of women who resorted to unsafe abortion because there was no legal access to having an abortion in Malaysia. Now, continuing with our discussion today, we will actually proceed with general questioning to our two speakers here today. So firstly, I would like to pose this question to both speakers. So we'll start off with Mr. Kadir.
I totally agree with Mr. Isaiah saying that abortion in Malaysia is illegal, except the three conditions I said. accept the condition. So the condition, I'm not going to repeat, but in Malaysia currently, yes, we are being very firm, especially in UM, it is very firm that abortion is illegal. Unless the number one priority goes to the risk of a pregnancy mother. Let's say the mother, the risk of a pregnant woman is more than having a pregnant, then you can abort it. The second is the mental health. Sometimes you question, what is risk of mental health? Risk of mental health when, like say you're a mother that has been pregnant, and due to the pregnancy, you are the consequences of you being a pregnant woman, you loses your job, you kind of you loses your family and so on. That causes you to eventually depress or causes you a mental health disease. Then you can consider for abortion. But this is so many criteria as well. A lot of multidisciplinary approach. The psychiatrist should come in, the doctor should come in, the gynecologist and obstetric should come in. So it's a very complicated, but it's not easy. So in Malaysia, I would say it sounds like easy, but it's not easy. It's really a process where a lot of professionals have to come and meet you and also kind of judge whether it's okay to abort or not. So I would say it's not easy to abort in Malaysia. Maybe in other countries, I'm not sure. Right. So that's my point.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Kadir. Mr. Wei Pin.
Okay, yes. So, in my opinion, regarding abortion examinations and also the general mental health assessment to see whether the clients, the mothers, were actually being distressed or not. And always, the mothers will always have the right to seek a second opinion if they are not satisfied with the decision being made by the physicians. So, is legitimate reason like you are being distressed due to this unwanted pregnancy? It's actually a valid reason to seek for legal abortions. So the current issue in Malaysia is basically we have a restriction and always a social stigma that not impose actually a restriction for the mothers to seek help. So I would say that the abortion right is actually a privilege to some educated families, yeah, due to obvious reasons.
All right, thank you so much for those insights. And just to add a more legal perspective into it, when I mentioned those 3 conditions, those are very strict conditions, and also it does not cover cases of rape. So in cases where a woman is raped, she does not have an access to an abortion in Malaysia. And secondly as well, when it comes to, for example, underage mothers, it also does not cover in those situations. So to the panelists here today, in your opinion, is there a need to allow unconditional legalization of abortion? And what do you think, what are the issues you think might arise out of this, Mr. Kadir?
Right, so this is a very subtle discussion, subtle border, whether we should legalize or whether not. But the point here is, I would rather look at the point of the root itself. Why does people want to get abortion in the first place? If you see the statistically, those who want to get abortions are the unplanned pregnancy or the one that get raped and so on. So the issue here is not about pregnancy, it's about the root causes. So we should tackle that issue first. Why in the first place are people getting unplanned pregnancy? Why is it the first place people are getting raped? Why is it the first place teenagers are getting pregnancy? That is the issue that I think we should tackle, rather than legalizing abortion to unconditioned, which eventually leads to the increasingly substantially of the root, where more people will do rape, more people will get pregnancy and so forth. So I don't think the solution will be rather be solved by legalizing the abortion to unconditioned, where people think, oh, it's easy. If I get pregnant, that's a body. If I get pregnant, that's a body. The question here comes to the human rights, where humans, everyone has rights. As what you see, the baby is survival at the age of 22 weeks of gestation, at more than 22 weeks of gestation. The baby has the rights because the baby is alive after 22 weeks of gestation. Try to imagine that someone takes your right, you will get angry. Try to imagine that you're taking away the baby rights. Are you sure that the baby wants to die during the womb or the baby wants to live? No. So we should not take the rights. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kadir. Mr. Hung, do you have a perspective on that?
being a medical practitioner, sometimes we don't really judge the people. We don't actually make a judgment of why this unplanned pregnancy is happening. We only provide a very technical approach to extend our help. So, yeah, this is one of our very fundamentals ethics saying that justice and also autonomy of the patients, mean that we always respect the right of the patients. When they continue with decision, it's not easy for them to come out with you and talk about this. So we don't have really, yeah, of course the root cause analysis to the is also part of the approach, but yeah, when it comes to the medicals, we solve things in the clinic. This is what our ethics goes. And also, in order to look at the root cause, it sometimes really you are kind of ignoring the life reality of those people who really want to help. I mean, really want to have these services. So I guess this is the reason that abortion should actually make legal. And also for the, talking about the fetals right as well. The reason why they actually have a cut-off point within 22 weeks to say that the fetals are actually viable, because that these fetals can actually live outside the womb with our medical intervention. So meaning that within these 22 weeks, so they are actually can live even they are not in the womb. That's why we call this alive. So the reason why we set 32 weeks so that we don't actually conduct any abortions after 22 weeks. And also, usually the abortions decision usually we make prior to this 22 weeks, because once you know that you're pregnant, that you really want to have this termination of pregnancy. That's why even in the Islamic perspective, there's a Hanafi sect saying that there's 120 days that the pregnancy can be aborted due to the health necessity. But sometimes the health necessity just being narrowed to save the mother's life, which is kind of to our perspective of health. I mean, health is not really just about not having any diseases, also the mental well-being. So that's the thing that we take closely.
Thank you so much. Now, there's also arguments put forward that the root cause of abortion is because of lack of sexual education in Malaysia. So just a little introduction. When it comes to sex education in Malaysia, we actually don't have sex education as a sole subject in our school system. It's incorporated into various subjects. For example, pendidikan jasmani, pendidikan kesihatan, even our biology subject, as well as Islamic education, where they teach you about the sexual relationship between a husband and a wife. Now, we're going to move on to the subject of sex education for the meantime, and this question is being posed to Mr. Kadir. Now, Mr. Kadir, the myth behind sex education is that it will encourage youngsters to be more sexually active. What is your opinion of this?
Right, so this is a very controversial subject where even in UPenn, we recently had these issues just to start out with a controversial issue where students want to distribute condoms to the students, but then the university itself didn't allow, or even some of the students were protesting, saying that no, we should not distribute a condom because we are encouraging those students to have sex. But the issue here is, we as a medical practitioner, that's your job to imply them or to give counseling to them. That's the organization, the NGOs, the MAWI, the JAWI dan sebagainya, to eventually tell the citizens to not have sex. But we as a medical practitioner, we are getting our plates full of HIVs and STDs and many more. So the point here is, this topic, when I got this topic, it was so closely related to me because I recently did a community research, where I did a real research on a respondent of 36 students in an area, in a school, in somewhere in KL. And the students are Form 3, Form 4 students. Surprisingly, that when we did the research, I will share you the data and statistics. Surprisingly, that these Form 3, Form 4 students, 50% of them have sex actively. And when today they have sex actively, that's number one. Number two is, almost all of them doesn't practice safe sex. So when you do not practice safe sex, that's where your consequences to your health and to your family, to your community, eventually gets back, right? That's the first thing. So if I'm a Muslim, I'm looking in a bigger picture. So every one of you have your own role and responsibility. If you don't allow us to stop people getting infection, stop people getting sexually transmitted disease, stop people getting pregnancy and once for abortion, then you are not doing your job by preventing them to not have sex. That's not my job. I'm as a medical practitioner, I don't stop them having sex. I can tell them, yes, sex is dangerous while you are underage, but if you want to have sex, you have safe sex. Got my point. So the question here is whether it is encouraging students to have sex by promoting, say, sex education. Do we really teach them position of sex? What's the content of safe sex? Content of safe sex is not position of sex. It's not the sound, the amusement of sex. No. Sex education is a very broad education. It includes healthy relationship. It includes the rights of you to have sex. It includes reproductive health. It includes even to a subtle issue such as you can go and ask any of the secondary school students, do you know why your penis were erected in the morning? That is sex education. It is normal to have, but sometimes they do not know. They think, ooh, I got amused. But these are the myths. They think that by having this is something lovely. So the point here is people are not understanding what is the content. It's not the customer that gaining this knowledge. Even the upper authorities doesn't know what is the content of sex education. I got my sex education in medical school. How bad it is. Yes, I agree. Science, you have this biology. Biology only teach you the structure of penis and the structure of vagina. That's all. Science teach you, you come from a sperm and ovum. It's not about that. It's more than that. And this safe sex eventually prevent you to lead you to, like pornography and all. Because you know why people get into pornography? Because they're enthusiastic. They will never know what's real sex about. Pornography is not the real sex. Pornography is absolutely wrong. That's not love. That is just to promote, to advertise and all that. So you got my point here. Even kids, 12 years old, 9 years old, are watching pornography. Why? Because they're not getting education. Not only talking about the syllabus in the government, in the education. It's also including the parents, including the teachers. They are ashamed to eventually talk. If let's say a student asks about something related to sex, the teacher will be like, why are you asking that? You're not supposed to ask that. It's bad. You kind of imply them that anything about sex is bad. You should not know. But actually, as an educator, as a parent, just tell the truth. If someone asks me, I wish when I was young, I would like to ask my dad, hey, where did I came from? And my dad really answered that, basically it came from a product of mom and dad. And then I keep on asking, and then they slowly gave me the information. So I got a very good sex education when I was young. I don't have one. So I believe that yes, giving a sex education to the primary students are important, but besides that, making the upper people to understand what is the content of sex education is much more important so that we can imply the system.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kadir. Now, this question is to Mr. Hang. So, are there any common myths regarding abortion that you wish to shut down? And if you don't, would you care to comment on the speculated myth that abortion increases the risk of breast cancer and infertility?
Okay, so about the myth just now, I think I have give a very obvious thing for the question that the audience might need. So I just straight go to the point that whether abortion would increase the risk of breast cancer or infertility. So in order to have breast cancer, there's certain risk factors we medical practitioners will consider. The first of it would be the increase of the hormone exposure. That's very subtle. If you have your pregnancy earlier, or you have your menopause a little bit late, that consider prolonged hormone exposure, or you are taking any medications with combination hormone that increase the risk of breast cancer. And also perhaps your family history, you have a very strong family history that your members having breast cancer, that will increase the risk. And also perhaps unhealthy lifestyle, say alcohol, smoking, obesity. None of these consist of abortion. Right? So this is based on what we have in our trainings and our practice. And about the infertility, because having abortions, there's also a few methods to conduct abortions. One of it is a surgical approach, meaning that we have to go to the vagina and also do some curettage, take out all the remains of the fetus. That is a procedure, is a surgical procedure that might causing some adhesions inside the womb. Alright, so this will causing something we call the Asherman syndrome, which is one of the complications. And eventually you will just imagine that your womb stick up together, so it's very hard to have conceive. So this is probably one of the things that might increase the risk of infertility. But this is actually a surgical complications, not to say that it's abortions. Right. So
Thank you so much. Now, Mr. Kadir, from a medical perspective, do you think the current syllabus covering sex education in Malaysia is sufficient? For example, reproduction, process, and biology. And what would you recommend to include in the reform syllabus as proposed by our government earlier this year?
Right. So it's absolutely not sufficient enough. Even if it is sufficient, I believe not only the syllabus is the problem, the educator is also a big problem here. So basically, like say just put ourselves into your shoes. Right? Do you really, if let's say, okay, let me ask you, hey bro, how many times you masturbate a day? Do you really tell to me now? No. But let's say a teacher asks you, hey bro, how many times you masturbate a day? It's like, what the heck, man? If let's say your close friend asks you, hey bro, how many times you masturbate a day? You will surely tell. Right. So this is the fact. This is the fact. So the point here is about, I don't think the syllabus or the topic should be taught by educators. It should be taught by peers. If let's say, I went to this group, alright, I had this group, a bunch of group, about 10 of them, right? I was one of the first girls. And the teacher weren't sure about whether they having sex or not. It was a randomized control trial. I was with them for 1 month. Try to imagine, third day of my stay with them, they started to blow up. Oh yeah, I have girlfriend. Then okay, as time goes on, they started to blow up. Oh yeah, we have sex. Because when I do have everyday sex. Gang. Now this is just a story to tell you that they will not open up to someone stranger to them, someone the age is a gap. So the point here, yes, I'm answering that the syllabus is not enough, but I think the problem is not only that, it's a bigger problem. So I believe universities, students should have these kind of activities to the schools to talk, to promote on sex education. Rather than the educator, they will never open up. Even you will never open up to your professors. Apatah lagi a young kid, do you think they will open up? Because we are more mature, but they are not mature enough. So I guarantee you they will not open up. So the university students, where we do have sufficient enough sex education, or if we don't have, we can learn and then we can pass down. So it's called a peer-to-peer education. So to imply sex education, I would not say start from university students, but start. There is one student that didn't knew about kissing at the neck, grabbing boobs are normal because they are lacking of sex education. You got my point? Until to one extent where this student eventually went for a talk and knew that this was wrong, and then she got traumatized because she didn't know. She thought it was normal, or it's just a educator grabbing my boobs or kissing my neck. It's nothing wrong. I don't feel anything because the sex education is not there. You got my point? So we really need to make them understand sex education is not about having sex. It's more on healthy relationship. You know, one of my topics in my research was healthy relationship. How to know whether your relationship is healthy or not. Sometimes you get into a relationship during your secondary because you just want, because your friends have a boyfriend, I also want to have a boyfriend. But you do not know where is the limit. So that is part of your sex education. Or maybe if let's say the taboo is so high, sex education, maybe we should really change sex education into maybe reproductive education or something, because people are so stigmatized with sex. So another idea on how we can promote sex education is change the name to reproductive sex education. So yeah, so that's my question. And then for the next question, I will show you my data, alright?
Thank you so much, Mr. Kadir. Mr. Hung, so previously Mr. Kadir had mentioned that when it comes to access to abortion, doctors are also a factor in it, because there are some doctors who are reluctant to provide such services based on their belief, their religion, and their principle being pro-life, etc. So say a pharmacist or a doctor's religion prohibits the act of abortion, should he or she then be compelled to violate their religious conscience by prescribing abortion drugs and contraception to their patient?
Okay, so, oh yeah, just now we talked about the difficulties and the limitations when it comes to the criteria of the termination of pregnancy. So, when having a healthcare practitioner to offer this, it seems like something contrary to the norm, because that you are asking the mother to give away the life. This is usually what our perspective means. But when this is obviously a case that this pregnancy is causing harm to the mothers, then this is basically a responsibility for a medical practitioner to offer this in a safe manner. So we are not here to judge, is what I say, but we are trying to help by giving the safe abortions access. So if this abortion is not safe to the mother, if this pregnancy is not safe to the mother, then we are going to be a little bit aggressive on it. But this is of course being contrary to the conscience of all the medical practitioners. But obviously, if it doesn't have these services being offered, it's actually a breach of the medical's healthcare, the healthcare responsibility. So just in this way, and this is actually a life-saving things to the mother. That we didn't give it, that we are reaching our responsibility.
Thank you so much. Now, back to Mr. Kadir. In your opinion, do you think that sex education would at least reduce the abortion rate in Malaysia, especially among teenagers?
Alright, it's a good question because part of the, can you open my slides? So, a part of the sex education is also the prevention of pregnancy or safe sex, which includes condoms or which includes penetration before, or before you even penetrate. You removal of your penis before you penetrate and so forth. So, yes, because the content of, you see, why do people want to get abortion and how sex education can prevent abortion? If you look in the perspective of how many of people want to get abortion are from the teenage pregnancy, and this teenage pregnancy comes from the relationship which is maybe not healthy, or maybe they have they didn't get the safe sex and so forth. So the point here is, if we tackle the root, we start having sex. I'm not promoting sex, but you as a human, you judge yourself. You want to do it, you do it. I'm not going to be judgmental to you. But my job here is to make sure you don't come to my clinic and ask for abortion unnecessarily. You are taking life to another person. So if you look at the perspective of me educating you about using condoms, about removal before it penetrates, or any other methods, you will at least reduce the possibility of you getting pregnancy, and eventually you will not need an abortion. The second point of thing here is, when we educate you about healthy relationship, you know your limits. Yes, I can have a boyfriend, I can have a girlfriend, but once you started to touch my boobs, kiss my neck, oh yeah, that's the limit. That's the limit. So people doesn't know the limit. You seem to be, takkan people tak tahu? Yeah, people tak tahu. People really don't know. There's this one incident, there's this one young girl got been fingering by her uncle. Where she thinks it's normal until one day she felt itchiness and painful over the area, and then she told her mom, oh, because the uncle put a finger into my vagina. Because this kid, poor kid, doesn't really know that doing that is wrong. If let's say you have the education of knowing that the limits of your body, you know, fingering is not a norm thing, she can be identified, or she can be informed to her parents or to anyone earlier rather than after multiple times until the vagina got disrupted. You got my point? So that's where sex education will reduce the amount of abortion rate, but not to max to 100%, but it will reduce the burden of many people. So let me just share so this is research done by a group of medical students, including me. It was a peer-to-peer adolescent club education program. So we were trying to imply where we really believe the Ministry of Education program is not sufficient enough, number one, and the educators are not the best people to even educate the students. So let's just have a look at our overview. Next. Alright. So okay, next. Alright. So this program was a month program where we will deeply engage the student once in a week, but in between that we will have a mentor-mentee. Anytime we can speak to them and you join them. So it's to develop a comprehensive sex education in the school. So it's a Form 3 and Form 4 students, and also to evaluate the effectiveness of the sex education. Alright. And also to improve the knowledge, okay? We can go next. I just want to show you why peer-to-peer. Why not the teachers? We have to highlight this because peer-to-peer, they feel more comfortable to share. On the first day, they were not comfortable. But on the second day, I'm not going to talk to them pennies because their level of knowledge is what? The typical Malay would be kote or whatsoever lah. And we're being open here because when you go to their level, they will open up to you, and then you can bridge your openness, and then you can imply the knowledge. You have to always think that. Let's say you're someone that nobody knows you, and you smoke, and people come tell you stop smoking. You're like, what the heck, man? Let's say someone close to your heart, your girlfriend. Come on, it's not good for your heart. It's going to destroy your family. You'll be like, shit, man. It goes deep into your heart. So that's why peer-to-peer is important, but it goes deep to the student's heart to say that, you know what, this is wrong. And then it's wrong. You got my point? Alright, next. Alright, okay, next. So this is just the methodology of the program. Alright, so we have three programs that we think is important. The number one is puberty and sexual physiology, where maybe some of it's in the biology subject, but not everyone thinks biology. And second is we also talk about the erectile erections, how does it occur, why does it occur, what are the factors that it occurs besides morning erection, where your nafsu and all that. We really imply that knowledge to them. Second is healthy relationship with your partners, with your family and your friends, right? And then the third is also consent and empowerment. This is really that important. Where students, almost everyone, none of them knows about safe touch. They don't know. For the non-Muslim, by holding your neck, holding your shoulder is normal. For the Muslim, it's not normal. For the non-Muslim, kissing is normal. For the Muslim, it's not normal. But grabbing the boobs is not normal. But they didn't know about that. Fingering is not normal. They didn't know about that. So that's where our module 3. So we try to compile a subject where it's not in the syllabus, where I think I would like to know when I was in secondary school, rather than knowing in medical school. You got my point? Alright. So let's go forward. Alright. Next. Okay, the results. So this is very important. Out of 34 participants, only 26 remain at the end of the program, which is good because the rest of the 8 participants was the prefect, which is a good boy and good girls, and they think like what the heck, they are surrounded by some naughty students, so they just smell out fine. But then 46% of them watch pornography materials, and they are from 4 Form 3 students. They watch pornography. where they get access. We can't prevent the access. So we can't do anything there. And 11.5 have started masturbating. This we do not know whether they are being very honest to me or not. But okay, as long as some of them being honest. And 57.7 admit that you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. In a young age. So try to imagine this combination, watching pornography, masturbating, and having a boyfriend, girlfriend. Wouldn't it lead to sex and pregnancy and then wanted for abortion? And if not abortion, you just deliver and left it in the longkang, toilets. Oh, this is disgracing, guys. So we as the university students tackle these issues. Rather than telling educators have to, kind of teach the students. No, not educators. You guys, get to the schools, teach them this. That's the best way. Alright. So overall, next. Okay, you see this. Preference of students to whom they would discuss their personal problem. Personal problem is very subjective. It can be relationship, it can be about school stuff and all that. Most of them goes for friends, especially the female. Why male is lesser? Because they don't share problems. They keep them to themselves. But female prefer to share. Right? So we have to tackle this rather than the parents, because they will never share. You have sex, do you tell your parents? No. You might just share to your close friend. What to do, Mana? You got my point? So, in conclusion, we did a pre-assessment and a post-assessment. I was not able to show you that because it's private and confidential. But the assessment was more about the knowledge. Before we even start the program, it was 0%, guys. 0%. Maybe some of them literally knows a bit of that here. But after the program, at least 70% of the participants did answer correctly. And the 30% was because it was not easy to handle naughty students. It was not easy. They were jumping here and there. We have to go down to their level. And I eventually Google, because I'm not good in Malay, but I have to Google all these words that they use. Babi, all that. P words, K word. And I have to learn that because I have to go to their level. Rather than you talking, you know what, vagina is not good. You're putting feathers into vagina. You'll be like, what the heck are you talking? You have to go to their level. Then they will really like you. Alright, so that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kadir, for a very comprehensive explanation. Now, this is our last question to Mr. Hong. As I've mentioned just now, there were conditions for you to have an access to an abortion. Now, in certain circumstances, a medical practitioner is legally allowed to assist the patient in abortion. What is your take on it, and whether you think such conditions or exception is adequate in reducing unassisted abortion and reducing mortality rates among women?
So, talking about the legal access, just now we have been clear saying that there is actually access to abortions, but whether the medical practitioners are willing to do it, or so the question is,
Do you think it's adequate, those exceptions? Is it adequate to reducing uncertified abortions?
right. So it's just from our perspective as a medical student in UM, we never see any cases being conducted by our professors or specialists here, and that's why it's always for us curious how actually the abortion access in Malaysia, though they are legals, but we never see it. So this is basically due to the heavy restrictions, and perhaps we might somewhat question our competency of our professors or what, but there is actually some access in some private clinics under the Reproductive Right Advocacy Alliance Malaysia. There are actually a few clinics are qualified to provide safe abortion services, but this is not very well known by the public. So, this is basically all the restrictions by the common public by not having abortion, and also sometimes think that abortion is illegal in Malaysia. And what the mortality rate, about 500,000 of the abortions being conducted under the safe abortions. There's only 6 cases which causing complications in the regionals, but in Southeast Asia. So this is I'll say the safety of the abortions.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Hong. Now we shall move on to the Q&A session. We have about 10 minutes, so the floor is open for 2 questions. So if you have a question, you can stand up. You don't need a microphone, this is a small space, and then you address your name, the question, and who that question is being addressed to. And you guys are most welcome. All right, thank you.
Actually, I jotted down a few questions. So I'll start with the first question. So you said that abortion is considered. No, abortion is illegal. It's only when there's risk to the mothers, right? So, so it doesn't cover rape, but most of the time, abortion is needed for these type of cases, right? Especially, I would think that. So, what do you think about incest? Should we legalize incest? No, not legalize. Legalize abortion for cases of incest,
Who is that question directed?
Perhaps Ms. Simon can speak up on this. Pro-abortion. No, I like to know his opinion.
So yeah, just like what I mentioned just now, distress, unplanned pregnancy is considered a legitimate reason for a woman to ask for abortion. So I think it's a yes for me. Because if this incest is a distress or low self, that you think that this pregnancy is not unless that consider a goal for abortion. This is a very pro-choice opinion.
To add on that, so you're talking about ethical issues, right? So if you would say that, oh, okay, incest, if the children that are born out of incest, you might have genetic problems and that, and all the other complications, right? So you have higher risk of mortality, this and that. But if you have abortion, so you terminate the life before you even see the complications taking place. So is that ethical in your opinion?
So talking about the consanguinity, right? Like even that you were having a Down syndrome child being diagnosed prenatally, means that before the patient, before the baby is being born, they have been diagnosed with the Down syndrome. It's actually sometimes not a valid reason in a life related practices, because you always have a support group, you always have a OKU big issues, and also have a social support to ensure that this child having a maximum potential. So even having that kind of things is not a legal reason to have abortion. But when it comes to this rape case and also incest, it's just my personal opinion that saying, well, if this pregnancy is actually distress to the mother, then perhaps the mother can say.
Do you have any more questions from the floor? All right. Your name, the question, and who it is addressed. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Aizat, and my question is addressed to Mr. Abdul Kadir. So regarding sex education, I agree that for sex education to be implemented at school, we need to educate the higher ups first and foremost. But I want to focus on sex education at home. For you, you said that your parents made the right choice by educating you slowly when you were little. But most of the parents today, they tend to avoid the conversation regarding sex because they don't want to or they are shy about it. So they think that, oh, if you know, you know. And the same goes for me. My parents were too shy to say about it, so I know along the way. So in your opinion, how can we change the behaviors of these parents today?
So, I mean, just ask everyone here, how did you know the sex education? That's my first question. Most of people get to know their sex education via the pornography. And that is the wrong content of sex education. That's where it leads. So, to educate the parents, we have to educate this. If you don't teach them, they eventually going to learn it via the internet. But if you intervene them earlier before they eventually goes to the internet, then you can eventually prevent them from doing bad things. For example, I just give my example. My dad was being very open to me. He said that, this, that, and then once he said, hey boy, you know what, I know you will come to a stage where you watch porns and all that. You may, but you need to know that that's not the right. But you may watch, that's not the right. Just remember that. and if you want to know the right thing, I will teach you. But he didn't stop me from watching porn. He knew that I will watch, but he told me that that was the wrong thing. You got my point here? So we really need to make parents understand. 99% of people watch porn. It matters of how much you watch, that's you and yourself. And that 1% who didn't watch are Malaya. Alright, you got my point here? Alright? Because this is also something natural. So we need to educate the parents that you have to be the intervention of not letting them to drawn by the wave of the internet. You know, they will eventually go there because peers and all that, but if let's say parents goes earlier, they can grab them to the right one. You know that, alright? So to change the behavior of parents is hard because the mentality or the maturity of you getting to a level of 21 years old, you have this egoistic of not want to listen to anyone. So what I would suggest is by some of the professors or what to do some research, even myself, to do some research and prove that those parents who educate child on sex and those parents who doesn't educate child on sex, where do this child ended up in? If we can come up with a statistic showing that parents that educate child on sex education, they are more rational rather than parents who do not talk about sex and they ended up being, doing some illegal sex, sexually active. If we can come up with that statistic, we might able to tune a bit. But I would say it's not easy. So how do we change this? We change us. We are going to be future fathers and mothers. Don't care the generation. They are too black and thank God they're educated. But you do the job. You do the workshop, not only to primary school and secondary school, but do to your peers, saying that, you know what, we have to be the parents that educate child on sex education. So that in 10 years, you can see the tune of generation saying that, wow, all parents are talking about sex right now. Fine, that's great. Right? So I think that's the best solution. No one is going to listen about sex education. You should go and talk to your parent, mom, dad, you know what, please stop, healthy relationship to my younger brother. She'll be like, what the heck, this is not good. You know what? It's not going to work. It's not going to work. Right? So you guys have to change in your life. Right? That's it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kadir. We have time for one more question. We have a question. Your name, the question, and who it is addressed to.
Hi, my name is Aisha. So my question is, in regards to your brochure, Mr. Kadir just now said that if we're just the fantasy in the womb to life, but however, most of the time, the cases of accidental pregnancy always happen to underprivileged girls, where the consequences of not aborting the baby might be worse, such as the girl might not give the baby its necessities, and there might be cases of domestic abuse and poverty, which is detrimental to the society as a whole. So this question is directed to both of you. What is your take on that?
We'll start off with Mr. Hang first.
So talking about unplanned pregnancy eventually will lead to social issues. But this is actually a valid reason that having a single mother planned pregnancy causing this. So I agree with abortion might probably be the solution when it comes to this. Well, it could be a part of the solution. It helps when it comes to in terms of the long run.
Thank you, Mr. Kadir.
Alright, so in my point of view, I mean, for me is I'm looking at what perspective. Do you think that if we don't do the abortion, right, eventually those teenage pregnancy girls will eventually deliver the baby in a way such where it's not clean, it's not sterile, it's dirty, they're going to deliver in the toilet, they're going to deliver in the rubbish bin, or I don't know where, whatsoever. But to confirm it's not sterile and they're going to lead infections to the patient itself. So my point here is if let's say the baby is viable, it's the baby's rights to live. So talking about the domestic issues and all that, I do know there's certain NGOs who accept this kind of baby income. I'm not really sure because this is my first year subject, correct? But they do have, Malaysia have this platform. So you can be a win-win situation where the mother can deliver the baby safely in a hospital setting. Even now the debate is between dola doli and a real specialist. Apatah lagi without a dola doli and you do your own delivery at home. That's ridiculous, right? So try to look in a bigger perspective. Yes, you want to do abortion. Basically, why you want to hide this information from your parents? You want to hide this information from your friends and so on. But some people who get pregnancy, they think by delivering the baby, by having the baby, I have lots of responsibility. Because they do not know that Malaysia has this platform. So I think the NGO that provide this platform has to come forward and say to the people, you know what? If you had this baby, give it to us. And then that's where you can adapt children and so forth, so on. It's a long procedure. But the point here is, I totally disagree by aborting a viable fetus, right? Because I'm also a human rights trainer, right? And I don't agree. Because if I was a baby, I'm so bad. I'm going to be angry because I can't talk here today if I was being aborted. You might not know the baby will be someone really important in the country. You do not know the baby should be your child, girlfriend or boyfriend or future husband. You will never know who the baby is going to be. Right? So, firstly, if you are not doing abortion, if you are not delivering the baby in hospital, the patient is going to deliver at home. More complications. It's not sterile. Infection goes direct to your womb. Right? That's number one. If you provide them in hospital settings, yes, they have to face the consequences. They get pregnant, face the consequences, answer to your parents, answer to your friends and all that. That's right. We can give support. What we ensure you, mother is safe, baby is safe. If you have domestic problem, we will go to the NGOs that provide. So that's my point of view, right?
Thank you. Mr. Ng?
And also want to not generalize my answer just now. It actually depends on the mother's decisions. If the mother's decisions were being made because of not being informed or having lack of access to the information, perhaps we can always attend the concern. Like if she have made this decision out of fear or afraid, then we perhaps can consult accordingly, saying there is actually a support group, there's NGO to help out, there is platform. But even after all the consultations, the decision was still not having the child, then, well, we can offer the abortion. Not saying that, well, we're just giving abortion as a solution to, treat the cause. At the end of the day, one side doesn't fit all.
Okay, thank you so much to our panelists, to the audiences. Thank you so much for your question. Now, for our last remarks, I'll give the panelists 1 minute each to give a final conclusion of what you want to deliver to for the audiences to bring home today.
Right. So my topic will be on sex education, which reduces the amount of abortion rate in Malaysia. So I believe that we should be the pioneer. It's hard to talk. I'm glad I'm talking to law students, right? Talking to law students and medical students, even though I'm being judgmental, but I've experienced. It's not easy to talk to students who can't see the bigger picture. So you guys have to be the pioneer to initiate this thing. Trust me, if this thing is a success, where all university students really advocate this sex education to primary, secondary schools, you will see a massive difference. If all students agree with distributing condoms to students, because we can't do anything, they want to have sex. You can do drama and all that. But my job as medical, I don't want to see you in clinic, in sexual transmitted disease clinic, right? So giving condoms is not a problem. Does I give you condoms and encourage you to do sex? No. Right? The worst come to worst, someone who didn't have sex gets a condom. The worst thing that you will do is you will give a try. Not try to have sex, you just try to wear it, that's all. You got my point? So take a message, start this earlier, and be a good parent, right?
Is there any qualification involved? Because I was not so sure whether for us non-medical background people can give a talk or give get spread information lah. I mean, spread information among kids, don't think about go to school, stuff like that.
Exactly. Don't worry. I mean, if let's say as a medical student, I want to know about basic life support. I have to go to workshop, get the certificates, and I'm certified. So it's easy. To do that, we need some opportunity to have these workshops, alright? Certified students to give talk on sex education. It can be 2-3 days, and you're good with it because you are mature enough to grab as many information in 3 days, right? So that's not a big problem.
Mr. Hung, your conclusion?
So my conclusion about the abortion is abortion is basically WHO, which is the World Health Organization, recommended primary care procedures. That the safe abortions is basically our responsibility as a medical practitioners. At the end of the day, we will definitely help out what is the best indication for the mothers to have it or not have it.
Alright, thank you so much, Mr. Hung. Mr. Kadir. Thank you so much to our audience today. We hope you have taken valuable knowledge with you, and we hope to see you again. Thank you so much.
There is one student that didn't knew about kissing at the neck, grabbing boobs are normal because they are lacking of sex education. You got my point? Until to one extent where this student eventually went for a talk and knew that this was wrong, and then she got traumatized because she didn't knew. She thought it was normal, or it's just a educator grabbing my boobs or kissing my neck. It's nothing wrong. I don't feel anything because the sex education is not there. You got my point? So we really need to make them understand sex education is not about having sex. It's more on healthy relationship. You know why? One of my topics in my research was healthy relationship. How to know whether your relationship is healthy or not. Sometimes you get into a relationship during a secondary because you just want, because your friends have boyfriend. I also want to have boyfriend, but you do not know where is the limit. So that is part of your sex education. Or maybe if let's say the taboo is so high, sex education, maybe we should change sex education into maybe reproductive education or something, because people are so stigmatized with sex. So another idea on how we can promote sex education is change the name to reproductive sex education. So yeah, so that's my question. And then for the next question, I will show you my data, alright?
Thank you so much, Mr. Kadir. Mr. Hung, so previously Mr. Kadir had mentioned that when it comes to access to abortion, doctors are also a factor in it, because there are some doctors who are reluctant to provide such services based on their belief, their religion, and their principle being pro-life, etc. So say a pharmacist or a doctor's religion prohibits the act of abortion, should he or she then be compelled to violate their religious conscience by prescribing abortion drugs and contraception to their patient?
Okay, so just now we talked about the difficulties and the limitations when it comes to the criteria of the termination of pregnancy. So when having a healthcare practitioner to offer this, it seems like something contrary to the norm, because that you are asking the mother to give away the life. This is usually what our perspective means. But when this is obviously a case that this pregnancy is causing harm to the mothers, then this is basically a responsibility for a medical practitioner to offer this in a safe manner. So we are not here to judge, just like what I said, but we are trying to help by giving the safe abortions access. So if this abortion is not safe to the mother, if this pregnancy is not safe to the mother, then we are going to be a little bit aggressive. But this is of course being contrary to the conscience of all the medical practitioners. But obviously, if he doesn't have these services being offered, it's actually a breach of the medical's healthcare. The healthcare responsibility. So just in this way, and this is actually a life-saving things to the mother. That we didn't give it, that we are reaching our responsibility.
Thank you so much. Now back to Mr. Kadir. In your opinion, do you think that sex education would at least reduce the abortion rate in Malaysia, especially among teenagers?
Alright, it's a good question because part of the, can you open my slides? A part of the sex education is also the prevention of pregnancy or safe sex, which includes condoms or which includes penetration before, or before you even penetrate. You removal of your penis before you penetrate and so forth. So yes, because the content of you see, why do people want to get abortion and how sex education can prevent abortion? If you look in the perspective of how many of people want to get abortion are from the teenage pregnancy, and this teenage pregnancy comes from the relationship which is maybe not healthy, or maybe they have they didn't get the safe sex and so forth. So the point here is, if we tackle the root, we start having sex. I'm not promoting sex, but you as a human, you judge yourself. You want to do it, you do it. I'm not going to be judgmental to you. But my job here is to make sure you don't come to my clinic and ask for abortion unnecessarily. You are taking life to another person. So if if you look at the perspective of me educating you about using condoms, about removal before it penetrates, or any other methods, you will at least reduce the possibility of you getting pregnancy, and eventually you will not need an abortion. The second point of thing here is when we educate you about healthy relationship, you know your limits. Yes, I can have a boyfriend, I can have a girlfriend, but once you started to touch my boobs, kiss my neck, oh yeah, that's the limit. That's the limit. So people doesn't know the limit. You seem to be, takkan people tak tahu? Yeah, people tak tahu. People really don't know. There's this one incident, there's this one young girl got been fingering by her uncle. Where she thinks it's normal until one day she felt itchiness and painful over the area, and then she told her mom, oh, because the uncle put a finger into my vagina. Because this kid, poor kid, doesn't really know that doing that is wrong. If let's say you have the education of knowing that the limits of your body, fingering is not a norm thing, she can be identified, or she can be informed to her parents or to anyone earlier rather than after multiple times until the vagina got disrupted. You got my point? So that's where sex education will reduce the amount of abortion rate, but not to 100%, but it will reduce the burden of many people. So let me just share so this is research done by a group of medical students, including me. It was a peer-to-peer adolescent club education program. So we were trying to imply where we really believe the Ministry of Education program is not sufficient enough, number one, and the educators are not the best people to even educate the students. So let's just have a look at our overview. Next. Alright. So okay, next. Alright. So this program was a month program where we will deeply engage the student once in a week, but in between that we will have a mentor-mentee. Anytime we can speak to them and you join them. So it's to develop a comprehensive sex education in the school. So it's a Form 3 and Form 4 students. And also to evaluate the effectiveness of the sex education. Alright? And also to improve the knowledge. Okay? We can go next. I just want to show you why peer-to-peer. Why not the teachers? We have to highlight this because peer-to-peer they feel more comfortable to share. On the first day they were not comfortable to. But on the second day, I'm not going to talk to them pennies because their level of knowledge is what? The typical Malay would be kote or whatsoever lah. We're being open here because when you go to their level, they will open up to you and then you can bridge your openness and then you can imply the knowledge. You have to always do that. Let's say you're someone that nobody knows you and you smoke and people come tell you stop smoking. You're like, what the heck, man? Let's say someone close to your heart, your girlfriend. Come on, it's not good for your heart. It's going to destroy your family. You'll be like, shit, man. It goes deep into your heart. So that's why peer-to-peer is important, but it goes deep to the student's heart. To say that, you know what, this is wrong. And then you know it's wrong. You got my point? Alright, next. Alright, okay, next. So this is just the methodology of the review. Alright, so we have three programs that we think is important. The number one is puberty and sexual physiology, where maybe some of it's in the biology subject, but not everyone thinks biology. And second is we also talk about the erectile erections, how does it occur, why does it occur, what are the factors that it occurs besides morning erection, where your nafsu and all that. We really imply that knowledge to them. Second is healthy relationship with your partners, with your family and your friends, right? And then the third is also consent and empowerment. This is really that important. Where students, almost everyone, none of them knows about safe touch. They don't know. For the non-Muslim, by holding your neck, holding your shoulder is normal. For the Muslim, it's not normal. For the non-Muslim, kissing is normal. For the Muslim, it's not normal. But grabbing the boobs is not normal. But they didn't know about that. Fingering is not normal. They didn't know about that. So that's where our module came. So we try to compile a subject where it's not in the syllabus, where I think I would like to know when I was in secondary school, rather than knowing in medical school. You got my point? Alright, so let's go forward. Alright, next. Okay, the results. So, this is very important. Out of 34 participants, only 26 remain at the end of the program, which is good because the rest of the 8 participants was the prefect, which is a good boy and good girls, and they think like, what the heck, they are surrounded by some naughty students, so they just ran out, fine. But then, 46% of them watch pornography materials, and they are from 4 Form 3 students. They watch pornography, where they get access. We can't prevent the access, so we can't do anything yet. And 11.5 have started masturbating. This we do not know whether they are being very honest to me or not. But okay, as long as some of them being honest. And 57.7 admit that you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend in a young age. So try to imagine this combination, watching pornography, masturbating, and having a boyfriend, girlfriend. Wouldn't it lead to sex and pregnancy and then wanted for abortion? And if not abortion, you just deliver and left it in the longkang, toilets. Oh, this is disgracing, guys. So we as the university students tackle these issues. Rather than telling educators have to, kind of teach the students. No, not educators. You guys, get to the schools, teach them this. That's the best way. Alright. So overall, next. Okay, you see this. Preference of students to whom they would discuss their personal problem. Personal problem is very subjective. It can be relationship, it can be about school stuff and all that. Most of them goes for friends, especially the female. Why male is lesser? Because they don't share problems. They keep them to themselves. But female prefer to share. Right? So we have to tackle this rather than parents, because they will never share. You have sex, do you tell your parents? No. You might just share to your close friend. What do you want now? You got my point? So, in conclusion, we did a pre-assessment and a post-assessment. I was not able to show you that because it's private information. But the assessment was more about the knowledge. Before we even start the program, it was 0%, guys. 0%. Maybe some of them literally knows a bit of that here. But after the program, at least 70% of the participants did answer correctly. And the 30% was because it was not easy to handle naughty students. It was not easy. They were jumping here and there. We have to go down to their level. And I eventually Google, because I'm not good in Malay, but I have to Google all these words that they use. Babi, all that. P words, K word. And I have to learn that because I have to go to their level. Rather than you talking, you know what, vagina is not good. You're putting feathers into vagina. They'll be like, what the heck are you talking? You have to go to their level. Then they will really like you. Alright, so that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kadir, for a very comprehensive explanation. Now, this is our last question to Mr. Hung. As I've mentioned just now, there were conditions for you to have an access to an abortion. Now, in certain circumstances, a medical practitioner is legally allowed to assist the patient in abortion. What is your take on it, and whether you think such conditions or exception is adequate in reducing unassisted abortion and reducing mortality rates among women?
So, talking about the legal access, and just now we have been clear saying that there is actually access to abortions, but whether the medical practitioners are willing to do it, or so the question is,
do you think it's adequate, those exceptions? Is it adequate to reducing uncertified abortions?
Right. So it's just from our perspective as a medical student in UM, we never see any cases being conducted by our professors or specialists here, and that's why it's always for us curious how actually the abortion access in Malaysia, though they are legals, but we never see it. So this is basically due to the heavy restrictions, and perhaps we might somewhat question our competency of our professors or what, but there's actually some access in some private clinic under the Reproductive Right Advocacy Alliance Malaysia. There are actually a few clinics are qualified to provide safe abortion services, but this is not very well known by the public. So, this is basically all the restrictions by the common 1 million of the abortions being conducted under the safe abortions, there's only 6 cases which causing complications in the regionals, but in Southeast Asia. So this is I would say the safety of the abortions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hong. Now we shall move on to the Q&A session. We have about 10 minutes, so the floor is open for 2 questions. So if you have a question, you can stand up. You don't need a microphone, this is a small space, and then you address your name, the question, and who that question is being addressed to. And you guys are most welcome. All right, thank you.
Actually, I jotted down a few questions. So I'll start with the first question. So you said that abortion is consequent. No, abortion is illegal. It's only when there's risk to the mothers, right? So, so it doesn't cover rape, but most of the time abortion is needed for these type of cases, right? Especially, I would think that. So, what do you think about incest? Should we legalize incest? No, not legalize. Legalize abortion for cases of incest,
Who is that question directed?
Perhaps Mr. Hong can speak up on this. Who is pro-abortion? No, I like to know something.
So yeah, just like what I mentioned just now, distress, unplanned pregnancy is considered a legitimate reason for a woman to ask for abortion. So I think it's a yes for me. Because if this incest is a distress or low self, that you think that this pregnancy is not less, that consider a goal for abortion. This is a very pro-choice opinion.
To add on that, so you're talking about ethical issues, right? So if you would say that, oh, okay, incest, if the children that are born out of incest, you might have genetic problems and that, and all the other complications, right? So you have higher risk of mortality, this and that. But if you have abortion, so you terminate the life before you even see the complications taking place. So is that ethical in your opinion?
So talking about the consanguinity, right? Like even that you were having a Down syndrome child and being diagnosed prenatally means that before before the baby is being born, they have been diagnosed with the Down syndrome. It's actually sometimes not a valid reason in a life related practices, because you always have a support group, you always have a OKU being issues, and also have a social support to ensure that this child is having a maximum potential. So even having that kind of things is not a legal reason to have abortion. But when it comes to this rape case and also incest, it's just my personal opinion that saying, well, if this pregnancy is actually distress to the mother, then perhaps the mother can say.
Do you have any more questions from the floor? All right. Your name, the question, and who it is addressed. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Aizat, and my question is addressed to Mr. Abdul Kadir. So regarding sex education, I agree that for sex education to be implemented at school, we need to educate the higher ups first and foremost. But I want to focus on sex education at home. For you, you said that your parents made the right choice by educating you slowly when you were little. But most of the parents today, they tend to avoid the conversation regarding sex because they don't want to or they are shy about it. So they think that, oh, if you know, you know. And the same goes for me. My parents were too shy to say about it, so I know along the way. So in your opinion, how can we change the behaviors of these parents today?
So, I mean, just ask everyone here, how did you know the sex education? That's my first question. Most of people get to know their sex education via the pornography. And that is the wrong content of sex education. That's where it leads. So, to educate the parents, we have to educate this. If you don't teach them, they eventually going to learn it via the internet. But if you intervene them earlier before they eventually goes to the internet, then you can eventually prevent them from doing bad things. For example, I just give my example. My dad was being very open to me. He said that, this, that, and then once he said, hey boy, you know what, I know you will come to a stage where you watch porns and all that. You may, but you need to know that that's not the right thing. So you may watch, that's not the right thing. Just remember that. And if you want to know the right thing, I will teach you. But he didn't stop me from watching porn. He knew that I will watch, but he told me that that was the wrong thing. You got my point here? So we really need to make parents understand. 99% of people watch porn. It matters of how much you watch, that's you and yourself. And that 1% who didn't watch are Malaya. Alright, you got my point here? Alright? Because this is also something natural. So we need to educate the parents that you have to be the intervention of not letting them to drawn by the wave of the internet. They will eventually go there because peers and all that, but if let's say parents goes earlier, they can grab them to the right one. You know that, alright? So to change the behavior of parents is hard because the mentality or the maturity of you getting to a level of 21 years old, you have the egoistic of not want to listen to anyone. So what I would suggest is by some of the professors or what to do some research, even myself, to do some research and prove that those parents who educate child on sex and those parents who doesn't educate child on sex, where do this child ended up in? If we can come up with a statistic showing that parents that educate child on sex education, they are more rational rather than parents who do not talk about sex and they ended up being, doing some illegal sex, sexually active. If we can come up with that statistic, we might able to tune a bit. But I would say it's not easy. So how do we change this? We change us. We are going to be future fathers and mothers. Don't care the generation. They are too black and thank God they're educated. But you do the job. You do the workshop. Not only to primary school and secondary school, but do to your peers. Saying that, you know what, we have to be the parents that educate child on sex education. So that in 10 years you can see the tune of generation saying that, wow, all parents are talking about sex right now. Fine, that's great. Right, so I think that's the best solution. No one is going to listen about sex. You should go and talk to your parent, mom, dad, you know what, please stop, healthy relationship to my younger brother, she do that. What the heck, this is not good. You know what, it's not going to work, it's not going to work. Right, so you guys have to change in your life. Right, that's it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kadir. We have time for one more question. You have a question. Your name, the question, and who it is addressed to.
Hi, my name is Aisha. So my question is, in regards to abortion, Mr. Kadir just now said that if we're just a fantasy, if we're just a fantasy to life, but however, most of the time, the cases of accidental pregnancy always happen to underprivileged girls, where the consequences of not aborting the baby might be worse, such as the girl might not give the baby its necessities, and there might be cases of domestic abuse and poverty, which is detrimental to the society as a whole. So this question is directed to both of you. What is your take on that?
We'll start off with Mr. Hang first.
Okay, so talking about unplanned pregnancy eventually will lead to social issues. Well, this is actually a valid reason that having a single mother is planned pregnancy causing this. So I agree with abortion might probably be the solution when it comes to this. Well, it could be a part of the solution. It helps when it comes to in terms of the long run.
Thank you, Mr. Kadir.
Alright, so in my point of view, for me is I'm looking at what perspective. Do you think that if we don't do the abortion, right, eventually those teenage pregnancy girls will eventually deliver the baby in a way such where it's not sterile, it's dirty, they're going to deliver in the toilet, they're going to deliver in the rubbish bin, or I don't know where, whatsoever, but to confirm it's not sterile and they're going to lead infections to the patient itself. So my point here is if let's say the baby is viable, it's the baby's rights to live. So talking about the domestic issues and all that, I do know there's certain NGOs who accept this kind of baby on income, right? I'm not really sure because this is my first year subject platform, correct? But they do have, Malaysia have this platform. So you can be a win-win situation where the mother can deliver the baby safely in a hospital setting. Even now the debate is between Dola Doli and a real specialist. Apatah lagi without a Dola Doli and you do your own delivery at home. That's ridiculous, right? So try to look in a bigger perspective. Yes, you want to do abortion. Basically, why you want to hide this information from your parents? You want to hide this information from your friends and so on. But some people who get pregnancy, they think by delivering the baby, by having the baby, I have lots of responsibility. Because they do not know that Malaysia has this platform. So I think the NGO that provide this platform has to come forward and say to the people, you know what? If you had this baby, give it to us. And then that's where you can adapt to the so forth, so on. It's a long procedure. But the point here is, I totally disagree by aborting a viable fetus, right? Because I'm also a human rights trainer, right? And I don't agree. Because if I was a baby, I'm so bad. I'm going to be angry because I can't talk here today if I was being aborted. You might not know the baby will be someone really important in the country. You do not know the baby should be your child, girlfriend or boyfriend or future husband. You will never know who the baby is going to be. Right? So, firstly, if you are not doing abortion, if you are not delivering the baby in hospital, the patient is going to deliver at home. More complications. It's not sterile. Infection goes direct to your womb. Right? That's number one. If you provide them in hospital settings, yes, they have to face the consequences. They get pregnant, face the consequences, answer to your parents, answer to your friends and all that. That's right. We can give support. What we ensure you, mother is safe, baby is safe. If you have domestic problem, we will go to the NGOs that provide support. So that's my point of view, right?
Thank you. Mr. Ng?
And also want to not generalize my answer just now. It actually depends on the mother's decisions. If the mother's decisions were being made because of not being informed or having lack of access to the information, perhaps we can always attend the concern. Like if she have made this decision out of fear, out of afraid, then we perhaps can consult accordingly, saying there is actually a support group, there's NGO to help out, there is platform. But even after all the consultations, the decision was still not having the child, then, well, we can offer the abortion. Not saying that, well, we're just giving abortion as a solution to, treat the cause. At the end of the day, one side doesn't fit all.
Okay, thank you so much to our panelists, to the audiences. Thank you so much for your question. Now, for our last remarks, I'll give the panelists 1 minute each to give a final conclusion of what you want to deliver to for the audiences to bring home today.
Right. So my topic would be on sex education, which reduces the amount of abortion rate in Malaysia. So I believe that we should be the pioneer. It's hard to talk. I'm glad I'm talking to law students, right? Talking to law students and medical students, even though I'm being judgmental, but I've experienced. It's not easy to talk to students who can't see the bigger picture. So you guys have to be pioneers to initiate this thing. Trust me, if this thing is a success, where all university students really advocate this sex education to primary, secondary schools, you will see a massive difference. If all students agree with distributing condoms to students, because we can't do anything. They want to have sex. You have to do drama and all that. But my job as medical, I don't want to see you in clinic, in sexual transmitted disease clinic, right? So giving condoms is not a problem. Does I give you condoms and encourage you to do sex? No. Right? The worst come to worst, someone who didn't have sex gets a condom. The worst thing that you will do is you will give a try. not try to have sex. You just try to marry. That's all. You got my point? So, take a message, start this earlier, and be a good parent, right?
Is there any qualification involved? Because I was not so sure whether like for us non-medical background people can like give a talk or give get spread information. I mean spread information among kids is okay, but I go to school stuff like that.
Exactly. Don't worry. I mean, if let's say as a medical student, I want to know about basic life support. I have to go to workshop, get the certificates, and I'm certified. So it's easy. To do that, we need some opportunity to have these workshops, right? Certified students to give talk on sex education. It can be 2-3 days and you're good with it because you are mature enough to grab as many information in 3 days, right? So that's not a big problem.
You, Mr. Hung, your conclusion.
So my conclusion about the abortion is abortion is basically a WHO, which is the World Health Organization recommended primary care procedures. But the safe abortions is basically our responsibility as a medical practitioners. At the end of the day, we will definitely help out what is the best indication for the mothers to have it or not have it.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Hung. Mr. Kadir. Thank you so much to our audiences today. We hope you have taken valuable knowledge with you, and we hope to see you again. Thank you so much.